What's up? Dynamix here, back with another video for you guys. I just want to say thank you to all of you who have tuned into the videos that I've done so far. Really appreciate it, and for all of you guys who have subscribed and been leaving comments, it's awesome to see you guys engaging, and I just really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel today, welcome. Really appreciate you coming here. I'm sure you're going to find value in what I have to offer. Just a quick reminder that there's many of you who are still watching these videos who haven't liked or subscribed. It's really easy to do. It's one of the easiest ways that you can help my channel. So please do, unless you think my stuff is crap, then I don't even know why you're here, but you know, it's all good. The other thing as well is that there's my website, dnbartist.com. Please go there and sign up for my email newsletter for when I release the goodies that are on the way. Anyway, today's session is going to be something which is really valuable for those of you who are beginners, but also going to be really valuable for those of you who might be intermediate or advanced. It's always good to rehash knowledge, even when you're doing things that you think you know quite well. Sometimes going back down to the basics can be a really good thing to do, and you might just get something new along the way. So the topic today, we're going to go through the basics of synthesis, and I think it's really important because most synths, once you understand the core principles, will be universal in 90% of synths, apart from their unique little things that they have. I've got a couple of hardware synths. The first one I got, which was a Korg Prolog 16, which is an analog synthesizer, which I really love. And I've also got the ASM Hydra synth, and those feature quite a bit in tunes of mine that have been released, because I like things that are tactile and hands-on, but you also get a really human feel out of it and unique sounds that you wouldn't necessarily get when you mess around with VST synths inside of the box. Both are good. Both can come up with brilliant sounds. So when you have a hardware synth, you very quickly come intimately close with these sort of main functions. And what I found was, after having hardware, that it improved how I interacted with VSTs. So I'm going to try and take what is in the hardware aspect of things and translate it back over to these VSTs to help you guys navigate. And hopefully it will result in you being much better at being able to shape and carve out the sounds that you're looking for or that you imagine, and just give you a lot more freedom in your music. So we've got the Vital Synth up in front of us. I've picked this again because it's a free synth. Anyone who's watching this can go get this VST and use it for themselves. Now, we want to start with an initial preset, and the first thing we want to do is go over to basic shapes as our selection for the waveform. Now, typically on old analog synths, sine waves aren't one of the oscillator waveforms that you can select from. What you would typically find is that they'll start with a triangle wave, and you'll have your triangle, saw wave, square wave, pulse width, and more pulse width. Okay, and these are all the basic waveforms that many iconic synth sounds are made of. So let's go down to basic shapes with the triangle wave. Now, if you look over here on Vision 4X, which I'm using for the oscilloscope and its other functions, you'll be able to see very quickly that we have harmonic content. So if you look here on the heat map, you can see all of those harmonics on top. And the same as when you look here on the paragraphic EQ, you'll see the same. Now, what happens is we cycle through these different waveforms. You'll notice that the harmonics enrich and change. So here's a saw wave, and you can see there's a lot of harmonic overtones. And then look at the square wave. So the saw wave is the one that is most rich, and that's what makes it really good for shaping sounds. Now, when we look at synthesis at its core, original synthesis is what you call subtractive synthesis. So when you understand that these harmonic overtones are additive, they're harmonic overtones, then the subtractive aspect makes sense. It means we're going to subtract away from these source sounds in order to create these sounds that we want. So let's get the triangle wave here, and how you would normally use say you wanted like a subtype sound in a synth. You'd take your triangle because it's the one with the least amount of overtones, and simply what you would do is you would engage your filter. So this would be the normal parameter that would flow along the chain in a synth. Okay, and then you just ramp it up and down. Okay, and then you'd have a resonance knob, which is this on the side in the Vital Synth. And when you pitch up the resonance all the way, it's actually an oscillator in itself. So you can actually use the resonance of a filter like another oscillator. Okay, and then as we look at the sound, you can see I've rolled it all the way off. And the more we roll it down, we can get to the core fundamental. And you can see in the oscilloscope that we now have a sine wave. So it's really that simple. In order to create a sub, just take a triangle wave, carve off and subtract those frequencies. And now you've got a sine wave. Obviously inside of these modern synths, they have the sine wave baked in. But when I flick to the triangle, no apparent difference, right? So that's the first thing. Right, now let's go and switch to a saw wave. And again, we're looking at shape. So your filter and your amp are the two things that have an envelope generator. So usually what you'd notice in a synth is it has oscillator 1, and it will be VCO, which means voltage controlled oscillator. And then you would have VCOEG, which is your voltage controlled amplitude envelope or envelope generator. So this part here, envelope 1, is in Vital Synth is the amplitude envelope. So when we put the attack on, we can start to shape a sound. And then of course we can play with the sustain. So the sound comes up, it increases in amplitude and then falls. So this makes the sound more dynamic. And then we've got decay as well, which is how quickly the sustain comes off. Right, and if we remove the sustain altogether, you'll notice then that the decay is onset and offset only. Alright, so if we wanted to make something that was quite sharp, we can increase or reduce the amount of attack. And all we're doing is using that amp envelope to shape the sound. So if we wanted something that had more of a stab, we can reduce the attack. And we can just play with the decay. And then of course the other thing that we've got is release, which is how the sound falls off after we release the key. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this into mono. So we're going to have only one voice. And we'll make what's called a SuperSaw. So typically what would happen is you would increase the amount of voices, or you would use the extra oscillators that come inside of your synthesizer. So to emulate what's happening inside of an analog environment, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to open up this second one, put it on basic shapes, and I'm going to select a saw wave. Okay, now you'll notice there's this weird phasing sound. And the reason that's occurring is because the randomize is up 100%. And what that basically means is that every time you hit the key, the waveform is starting at a different point along the positive and the negative of that waveform. If you want it to start in unison, you reduce the randomization all the way down, and that way they come into sync. No weird phasing. So depending on the type of sound that you're working on, you may or may not want this feature, but it's something to consider based on the type of sound you're working on. So let's move along to tuning this. So you've got these two saw waves, they're both in mono, and what you would probably do is you would start to detune them. So we've obviously got the tuning pitch here, and we just want to detune them slightly from each other. Okay, so I'm just going to put some attack back on this, on the amp envelope. So we've instantly got a SuperSaw, and you'll notice that it starts to sound quite a lot like what a Reese is, and that's basically more or less the recipe to a Reese. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the filter. So the filter would be the part that you'd normally grab, and you can turn the filter and play the keys and shape the sound out. And we'll want to send both oscillators into that filter. Okay, and then we've got resonance here, which is on the right, and that's usually a knob. And then the more we apply resonance, the more we get this kind of squelching sound. Now, what would happen on a traditional analog synth is that there would be a part here in the filter that you can send to the the filter envelope. So there's your envelope for the amplitude, and then there's the envelope for your filter. So we obviously can emulate that with the LFOs that are built in, or we could just use another envelope. So to make it more like what would be analog, let's use envelope 2, and then we'll assign it down onto the filter frequency, because this is traditionally how it is assigned and the way it's built in. Okay, and we'll bring the filter down, and now we'll start to shape the sound. The other thing that a lot of old school synth filters have is some kind of drive aspect that's built into the filter as well, which is why you see this drive knob here. So we can use that drive knob to grit up the filter as well. So what we're doing here is we're moving the filter in a positive direction. So it means we've turned the filter down, it's closed, and then we've got the cannot talk tonight. We've got the amp of the envelope pushing the sound up. So as this line is going up, so too will the filter rise up. And that's the direction we're going in. Now another thing that you have sometimes in filters, which is what's called keyboard tracking, sometimes written as KBD tracking or some variant of that, and that's what this key track is. So when we move it up positively, it's going to follow. So it follows the filtration relative to the key so that you can maintain the tone that you've built. So if you want it to stay in a specific tone, that's how you do it. Otherwise, if it's just where it's in no keyboard tracking, the filter is fixed to a specific frequency. It won't shift from there. Okay, so your basics you've got there is you've got your filter envelope. Now another thing that would normally happen if we bring the filter all the way up and open it, the envelope generator for the filter can go from a positive direction to a negative direction. So usually it sits center like that, and you can turn it to the right or you can turn it to the left. Turning it to the left is going to make it negative. And by the amount that we do it, will increase how much it dips down. Alright, I had to do a little bit of a reset there, but here we go, we're back inside the patch. Okay, now let's go get envelope 2. Let's assign it again to the filter frequency. We're going to move it into a negative position. And we'll start to shape this. So after you've picked the shape that you want, and then you can just adjust the amount going to that envelope. So as you notice, when you increase resonance, you start to get these kind of acid type sounds. Okay, now let's bring that resonance back down, and then we're going to drop the pitch of the synth down. And we've instantly got like a really nice crunchy saw wave bass. Very analog sounding. Now, one of the things about analog is you would naturally get drift in the pitch of these analog oscillators. So a way that you can emulate this inside of something like Vital, there's a little trick I'll show you. So you've got this random, okay? So this random is really useful. So if you go into the matrix and you select the random, and then you go to global, and then we want to go to global voice transpose, and then we can just apply this ever so slightly. So if I crank it up, you hear it go wonky all over the show. just a little bit, and now we've got a little bit of, you know, analog drift. So if you're going for that real classic kind of analog sound, it's able to be achieved. The other thing that you would find inside of a analog synth is some kind of noise generator sometimes. So we've obviously got the noise. We can then select that to run into the filter. And just like that, you've got pretty much an analog sounding synth inside of the box. Cool. All right, so let's reset this and let's just make ourselves a really quick kind of respace. So we'll initialize the preset. Okay, we're going to turn the randomize feature down. Add in a second oscillator, randomize feature down. Now obviously the initial is always a saw wave, but you'll notice it's actually different from the classic basic shapes saw wave, actually opposite. And they cancel each other out. So they're moving in different directions. So this one's moving positive and then negative, this one's going negative and then positive. So let's change them to the same. And let's go for our saw wave. Right, the first thing we want to do is detune them from one another. And then we'll pitch it down 1 octave. Instant res. Okay, and then you can run it into the filter. And then of course, if you'd like to, you can put that random feature back in. So once again, show you, we'll go random, 1, 2, global, transpose, and just a slight little bit of it. And then I've got macro 1 here. So I'm going to assign macro 1 to the filter cutoff. Accidentally shifted the pitch down to 48s for some reason. Cool, and then I'm going to bring that right down. So now I can just play this just like an analog synth. And if you wanted to, you could put this macro to hit the resonance a little bit as well. So if you wanted to push that resonance and let it tweak a bit as you go up, then you can see that it will push that resonance as it rises up. Add a little bit of drive. So there we've got a nice little groovy bass there that we can just have sitting underneath. Fun times, right? Cool. Now, obviously this is not an in-depth session on how to use this synth, but obviously a couple of things you'd do is potentially go in and use some compression to beef it up, use some distortion maybe. thing that you would typically find inside of some analog synths is they'll usually have some kind of reverb effect. So you can have some reverb there. Take those lows out. And the other thing that you might have as an option there as well is delay. So we just want to filter out all that low end stuff. Chuck it into stereo. Put it in dotted. Chuck it on a quarter. Just that simple. All right, so let's initialize it again. Go back to our voices. And let's play with something like pulse width. So again, you just grab it, bring your randomization down. Okay, and then we'll layer it up with another oscillator. So basic shapes, probably something like a triangle wave. And then we'll start playing with the tuning. And then add our filter. All right, and we'll start shaping the amplitude. All right, we're going to try something like a stab. Okay, and then we want to start playing with the filter. Okay, and then we can add a filter envelope. Get some sort of like beach ball sounding sounds. Add some drive. Try a bit of noise. If you wanted to, this isn't something that would be in typical hardware synths, but you could then bring this noise, cut out the low end by switching it to a high pass filter. Right, and then we want to send that, to filter 2. Okay, and then you can easily do something that's sort of arpeggiated with a sound like this. So if we just put in like a simple, actually I can make this super easy by just adding in an arpeggiator from the note effects. Just chuck this onto here. Make the octaves go up. fun there. And again, if you're treating it like a normal sort of analog synth, then you'd probably have some of these effects. I think something like a delay on this would be the ticket. It's really that easy, guys. Now, when you look at the sounds, I'll turn this off now, take this away. Just give me a sec here. Remove that. The types of sounds that we use give us a certain textures that we want. So, for example, when we look at our shapes, obviously sine waves, very smooth, and then we've got the square sine. You can see we've got extra harmonics to our overtones on the top, and then we've got our triangle. Then we've got the saw, lots of overtones, and the square, again, lots of overtones as well. And when we listen to them and we think about what they actually sound like, they have a kind of like a descriptive word that you could use for them. So a square wave is always really beefy and buzzy. So it's got a thick sound and a buzzy sound. The saw wave, very buzzy, but not so much beefy. Okay, and then we've got the triangle wave, beefy, but not very buzzy. So when you kind of understand the difference in how they flex away like that, and you go, well, if I wanted to make something sound kind of metallic, I'd maybe want to use something like a square wave. And then you'll notice as well, when you go for a pulse width, you kind of have the same buzziness of a square wave, but not the thickness and the beef. So you just get all that buzz. So like, this pulse width, you can easily tell straight away it sounds like chip tunes. All right, start making Mario tunes if you want. All right, so if I wanted to sound something sort of like thick and metallic, I think I would work with something like a square wave, especially if I was making a bass. So I'm just going to work this sound. And I'll just whip in a bit of a pattern here. right? And then I'll assign the filter. And then I'll just record it and just play it in. And then it's there. So very easy to follow the basics of synthesis here. Now, the other thing I wanted to look at is grabbing another instance of this Vital Synth and just go over one thing which I think is something that maybe a lot of people don't talk a lot about in D&B, or at least show how to do, and that's like pads. Pads are actually freaking awesome. And the key with pads is knowing what you're doing in terms of shaping the sound first of all. So let's make this really easy. We'll start with a saw wave. Okay, and then the first thing about knowing what to do here is the onset of the sound. So it's all to do with the amp envelope. And I want this to sound really kind of analog. So again, I'm going to use that randomized trick that I've showed you. And we're going to transpose, just put a little bit of drift on this. I'm also going to leave the randomize feature on this oscillator, because I don't really mind what it does here for the sound. And I just want a nice release. We could also bring down the sustain, just so we make the sound slightly more dynamic. Now, sounds like this are going to get loud really quickly because we're going to start adding a lot more voices. So I'm going to bring this level down firstly. I'm going to increase my voices to 16. just like a 16 voice oscillating hardware synth. And you can straight away hear we're starting to get some reminiscent sounds. Okay, so big whoop. All right, so we've got that all in there. Now the next thing I'll do is I'll increase the unison. So let's make it sound really fat. Go something like 7 voices. Bloody beautiful. Now what you then do, and this is where we can start having a bit of fun with a digital synth, but you know, pick something out of here. Let's go in here, flange scrowl. Okay, so got these nice little wave tables. And we can use these wave tables like oscillators. So I find a point that I think sounds interesting, and then I'm just going to get the LFO, and I'm going to put the slightest little bit of movement over it, and then I'm going to do a very slow movement. Try it up an octave. Okay, add a bit more release there. Okay, and then the next thing we'd do is we'd start using another oscillator just here. Go over this creepy solar one. Right, and I'm going to increase the voices on both of these. Really wide, really loud. So that's why I'm saying we want to bring the level of these down. Okay, now I'd want to go into the effects section here straight away. I want some reverb on it. And then I'd want to put in a bit of delay too. So sick. All right. And then what we can then do is use something like a notch. And we can just put a bit of drift on this. I think what I'd do here is I'd switch this to be bipolar. Inspiring. Okay, cool. And then what we'll do here is we'll do a different type of filter. So we'll go bandpass. Same thing, we'll set it to bipolar. And then finally, if you wanted to give it that whole kind of analog sound, you just chuck a filter on the end of it. And depending on where you are in the chain, quite often the filters come before the effects at the end. So if you put that at the first part in the chain, then you can catch some of those reverb and delay tails after the filter. And then we just need to assign it. So we assign that to macro 1. There you go, guys. That's how to make a pad. All right. Stabs. So let's take a basic shape again. Right, so with the stab, we want to use the amp envelope, or we can use a filter envelope. So turn on the filter. It's going to crank up the voices here to 3. Going to bring the width in. And then we're going to use envelope, we're going to use LFO1 this time as my envelope, and we're going to send it to envelope mode. And we're going to bring the filter cutoff down. Bring the resonance down a bit. Can make a sort of acid stab by increasing the resonance on the way down. And then drop this down an octave. Just dirty it up with some distortion. One of the good things about distortion, with it being filtered down, when it drops the filter, the distortion can add some harmonics back on the top. And then we'll add a delay. I'm going to put it into mid ping pong. I'm going to go for quarter dotteds. Got them in. Focus my frequency. I might just go normal. Make them a bit uneven. Just drop in a bit of a mix. And maybe a bit of reverb. Just going to bring that feedback down on the delay, just so it's a tickle. Can do a call and response. Cool. Just tighten that up a little bit. Sounding very analog-y. Bring in some pads. We've got the filters down. There we go. So yeah, those are sort of the main sort of basics around the fundamental core parts of a synth. So once you've got that main part, the source sound, the amp envelope, the filter with the filter envelope, you've pretty much got 90% of synthesis right there. And all you're doing is just shaping the sound, how it comes on. Is it dynamic? Is it in your face? Is it plucky? Is it tight? You can make your filter go open slow and close slow, or you can make that bite and be tight as well. So there's lots of ways to shape and carve the sound out. And then, of course, once you're getting to grips with all of that, then your mind will start to see other avenues of sounds you can create. And, you know, that's what I spend a lot of time doing just for fun, is just making patches as well, you know. So I like things like this. So yeah, guys, get synthesizing. It's a lot of fun. If you've got any questions, leave them down in the comments. And yeah, really appreciate you coming along today. I am pretty tired, guys, so you know, I'm not on my most energetic form today, but I really wanted to make sure I came through with another video for you. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you up next time. Okay, peace.